Like father, like son. Hey, that's what they say, but is it true? Let's find out, with stars who weren't just musicians, but legends, who shaped an entire generation. But where did these musical legends' sons end up? Did they shine like Dad, or burn out? Would you even be able to tell from the picture that these two were related? Hey, let's find out. Ozzy Osbourne and Jack Osbourne. Okay, I gotta say, if you told me these two folks were related, I'd probably not believe you. Okay, there's a little something in the mouth, maybe, but Jack does not have his dad's nose or hair, but did he get his dad's affinity for music? The Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne, was the frontman for Black Sabbath and was pretty much the textbook example of rock and roll excess. His voice and, shall we say, off-the-wall antics, both on and off the stage, made him famous all on their own, and, well, infamous.
I shouldn't be drinking alcohol, period.
When you think of Ozzy, you think the black eyeliner, his raspy voice belting out Crazy Train, and that enduring question. What's the next headline gonna say about him? Usually between him and Sharon. For more on that roller coaster marriage, check out our video on lasting Hollywood couples, cause they made the list. And then came Jack, who we got to know mostly through reality TV on The Osbournes. Jack was born on November 8th, 1985, and of course the son of Ozzy and Sharon. Jack's look and vibe were miles away from Dad. He wasn't wearing black leather and singing heavy metal, but he does share some of his father's quirky charm.
When he's in front of a camera is not who he really was at home. You know, when he was at home, he wasn't working.
But while Ozzy was the rock god, Jack made a name for himself in entertainment too. He hosted paranormal investigation shows and he produced documentaries. He may not be following his dad's path in music, but he's got that same fearlessness, that willingness to dive into things that most people wouldn't even dream of.
There's someone in the house, we're gonna jump out the window.
Stop it!
It's kind of funny, isn't it? They definitely walk very different paths, but still with that unmistakable Osbourne flair. Mick Jagger and James Jagger. Man, Mick Jagger was the guy to be, or at least imitate, either by looks or moves. And that look was pretty impossible to get totally right. But you know who could? James Jagger. Now, if James isn't a portrait of his dad's younger days, I don't really know who is. They got the same distinct features. Bright eyes, that unique mouth shape. The hair's not wild rock star waves, but the foundation is there. Pun intended. Mick Jagger, with his unmistakable lips and that swagger that we all tried and failed to imitate, was the heartbeat of the Rolling Stones. His energy on stage was like nothing else. And his voice on tracks like Brown Sugar and Jumpin' Jack Flash, it brought the Stones' music to life. Even as he moved through the decades, Mick always seemed like he could still run laps around younger rockers. Then there's James Jagger, his son, born August 28, 1985, to Mick and Jerry Hall, who might not be as well known as Dad, but still followed an artistic path. While Mick lives in front of a screaming audience on stage, James hangs out in front of the camera. He dipped into acting and starred in HBO's Vinyl. It was a great but short-lived show that explored the music industry's wild side. So okay, there is some connection there with Pops. As far as similarities go, it pretty much ends with looks and entertainment. Their personalities couldn't be more different. For one thing, James is way quieter and more reserved. But to be fair, when you watch him perform, there's definitely a flicker of that same special sauce that made Mick a star. Let the record show, sauce is probably a metaphor for drugs, but as far as I can find, James' record is way cleaner than Dad's. He may not be dancing across the stage, but he's definitely got his father's passion for creative expression.
I want you to know what love is.
And honestly, the same dang face. Paul McCartney and James McCartney. The phrase cut from the same cloth was made with these two in mind. James definitely has his dad's face. The hair falls in a pretty similar way. The eyes are a bit different, but they still have that same angle. Identical mouths. Yeah, these two could be twins. Paul McCartney was the nice guy of the Beatles, with that unbeatable bass line and charm that made fans just fall for him. He was also the musical mastermind behind more classics than most people even realize, from Hey Jude to Let It Be. Plus, his warmth and knack for melody are still second to none. Now, his son James may not have the global fame that Dad does, but he definitely inherited some of that musical touch. And James keeps a finger on the pulse for all things Beatles. James McCartney was born on September 12, 1977 to Paul and Linda McCartney, and life's been a very eventful one. See, James took up music too, with a quieter presence than his dad's, but with a pretty comparable zeal for songwriting.
Can't tell what's a lie, what's true.
He's got a bit of that thoughtful vibe that Paul had, and while his career has stayed mostly under the radar, his music has an honesty that, hey, it feels familiar. It's as though he took his dad's legacy and turned it into something deeply personal. Hey, there's no beating the Beatles, so putting a personal spin sounds like a perfect approach. And like Paul, he has this humble quality. He's not trying to ride his dad's coattails, he's just trying to make his own voice heard in the world of music. George Harrison and Dhani Harrison. So I don't think the resemblance is the most obvious right away, but if you know what to look for, there's no question. Dhani is George's son. Look at that, right down to wearing their hair in the same kind of style, and growing out a fashionable beard. But it might just turn out that looks aren't the only huge similarity that they share. George Harrison, the quiet Beatle, was known for his deeply spiritual approach to life and his incredible guitar work. Songs like Here Comes the Sun and While My Guitar Gently Weeps still honestly gives us chills and are a recipe for instant relaxation. George wasn't one for the spotlight, but his music spoke volumes, and his spiritual side made him one of the most respected musicians of his time. And then there's Dhani Harrison, born August 1st, 1978, the only son of George and Olivia Harrison. And she's a force to be reckoned with in the music world too. And like I said, he did not just get his dad's looks and style, he also dove headfirst into music. And here's where the similarities shine, cause Dhani's voice and mannerisms are so similar to George's that it's almost like hearing an echo of his dad.
It seems my love has up and left me.
Anyone else seeing double here? Dhani also took on some of his father's unassuming nature, preferring to let his music speak for itself. Now his work is more modern, of course, but you can't really invent the wheel twice, or be the force behind Beatlemania twice in this case. But the introspective quality is there, and he often pays homage to his father in ways that any diehard fan can hear clear as day. It's kinda like George's legacy lives on quietly through Dhani, as though George's peaceful soul passed a bit of itself down to him. Phil Collins and Simon Collins. Well, it can't be said that the Collins family doesn't rock an awesome head of hair. They've got kinda different shades going on, but Simon Collins definitely channeled his dad's rugged looks, that same long face, and those thoughtful eyes just waiting to put together the best drum beat in all of music history, and that's a fact. Phil Collins might be best known for that unmistakable drum beat in the Air Tonight. Plus his haunting voice, which brought Genesis and his solo work into the charts in the 70s and 80s. But it can't be overlooked that Phil was a bit of a renaissance man, taking on drumming, singing, songwriting, and even acting in his own way. Turns out, looks aren't the only thing he passed on to his son, who was born September 14th, 1976. Simon Collins also picked up the drumming gene, but took a slightly different route, with a deep love for electronic and progressive rock. Simon made his own name in music. He took his dad's rhythmic talent, but gave it a modern twist, blending genres and creating something that's very distinct to himself. Simon's music is like a nod to his dad's influence, but with his own spin. Less mainstream maybe, but definitely with that same Collins touch. Seeing Phil in his son is a reminder of just how deeply music can run in a family. Simon's collaborative team has been a bit of a start and stop endeavor over the years, with groups forming, changing, and dissolving on and off. Like first, he was in a quartet that just kind of worked under Greenhouse Studios, and then they became Sound of Contact. Some members came and went, but then they came back together by 2015 and put out the album Dimensionaut. And I think we're still waiting on a second one from the quartet, but he's also got albums with different artists, like 2012's Genesis Revisited and 2023's The Architect. Rod Stewart and Sean Stewart. Gotta be honest, I probably wouldn't have guessed these two were related at all. The faces seem pretty different to me. Hair color's way different, and of course the style. Just totally different bearings overall too, and that may extend beyond appearances as well. Rod Stewart, with his spiky blonde hair and raspy voice, was a rock and roll heartthrob who brought songs like Maggie May and Do You Think I'm Sexy into our lives. His style and swagger made him an icon, and he always seemed to have a mischievous glint in his eye that kept things interesting. Then there's Sean Stewart, born September 1st, 1980. A lot of September birthdays here. Sean's mom is an actress, Alana Collins. Now, Sean hasn't followed directly in his father's footsteps, but still has made his way into the world of entertainment, a bit more adjacent to mom's line of work. Sean's dabbled in a bit of reality TV, appearing on shows that give glimpses into the Hollywood lifestyle. He's got some of Rod's rebellious spirit, and you can see a bit of his father's charm in his confident, sometimes cheeky personality. No, he's not a rock star, but he's still got that same kind of magnetism that Rod had. Always a little rough around the edges, always up to something. John Lennon and Sean Lennon. Okay, so not the most obvious resemblance out there, but I do think once you know what to look for, you can't really forget it. Yeah, it's pretty clear. Pretty similar long face, same nose, something in the mouth. Sean is a solid blend of mom and dad. Another cog in the British invasion machine, John Lennon was the embodiment of change in the 70s. He was a man who stood for peace, love, and questioning authority. Who could forget Imagine?
Imagine there's no heaven.
I mean, John wasn't just a music icon, he was a revolutionary. Somehow in the most peaceful way possible. With those stylish glasses that almost everyone in my family needed a pair of, his calm demeanor and his artistic spirit made him stand out in the best possible way. Now fast forward to his son, Sean Lennon, born October 9th, 1975 to John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Now the appearance and attitude are pretty similar, but when Sean hit his 30s, it was clear he wasn't trying to copy his dad. Instead of huge global movements, Sean built a quieter, more introspective space for himself in music. While John was loud in his activism, Sean seemed to let his art speak for itself, almost as if he was a bit more private, a little more reserved. Of course, we know that Sean, along with Julian, lost their dad way too soon. I think Sean was all of 5 years old when John was murdered. 5. I can't even begin to imagine. And in such a horrible way. In some interviews, I think he said that after his dad's death, Sean ran into his room, threw himself on the bed, and just sobbed. And after that absolute nightmare of a day, Sean lost a lot of trust in everything. And how could you blame the kid? At a young age, he lost one of the constants in his life that kids are supposed to have, rely on. One tiny saving grace is, as far as the life of a celebrity goes, that at least never messed with Sean's head. He said that because life in the limelight was all he knew, it was never this big foreign, scary thing. I mean, hey, Elton John is his godfather. You've just gotta be used to grand stuff. Still, the Lennon legacy lives on. Sean's music carries traces of that same dreamy quality that we all loved about John, even if his voice and style are entirely his own. He's as active as ever. Sean served as a composer and songwriter for a song called Promise Hill. It marked the first collaboration between him and two guys you might have heard of, James and Paul McCartney. As far as family life goes, Sean's with a fellow musical artist named Charlotte. They've been together for ages, actually. I want to say at least 15 years. No kids, though. I just think it's fascinating to see these famous kids' progressions. John spent his early years challenging society, while Sean spent his carving his own niche in the world of music. But you can't deny that that same underlying spirit of individuality runs deep through the Lennons. Bob Dylan and Jakob Dylan. The Dylan father-son duo definitely looks like chips off the same old block. There's definitely a lot of his dad, with the same kind of rough, rugged looks. And even something charmingly old school about the way they go about playing music. Now Bob Dylan, he was a poet, a man of mystery and a voice of a generation. Whether it was the folk music of his early days, or the more electrified sound of the 70s and 80s, it was Bob's lyrics that told stories that resonated with everyone. He just had this raw, authentic vibe, and when he hit the stage, it felt like he was unveiling pieces of his soul. Fast forward to today, and here comes Jakob Dylan, the son of this lyrical giant. Now, Jakob has made his own name in the world of music, though his career has not been as wild and disruptive as Dad's. Jakob is Bob's son with model Sarah Lowndes, born December 9th, 1969. In his younger years, you could see the family resemblance, but Jakob has a style all his own. His band, the Wallflowers, brought a mix of classic rock and alternative sound to the table in the 90s. One of their great songs was One Headlight, check it out. And though his voice has the same gravelly, poetic quality, Jakob has always kept a little more distance from the public eye. He wasn't looking to be the next Bob Dylan, he was looking to be Jakob. But the influence, you can hear it in his lyrics, and the way he crafts his songs just like Dad did. It's funny, isn't it, how the son of a man who wrote Blowin' in the Wind could make his own waves in a similar way, but still find his own voice. David Bowie and Duncan Jones. Maybe the facial hair makes it harder to notice, but I definitely wouldn't have known these two were father and son right away. And hey, if you do, great, good for you, clap clap. It's because David Bowie's got a really distinctive head shape, to put it bluntly, and his son Duncan's features are much softer. I do see something in the eyes though, they're both beautiful. What do you think? Do you see it? We need to imagine either Duncan clean shaven or David with some scruff, and I'm not sure which is harder. David Bowie was all about reinvention. He went from Ziggy Stardust to the Thin White Duke, and we loved him through it all. His music was always evolving, and he never seemed to be satisfied with resting on his laurels. And he didn't just challenge music norms, he challenged fashion, identity, and even culture. And when you look at his son, Duncan Jones, it's like looking at the man who always seemed a few steps ahead of us, but in a much quieter way. Born May 30th, 1971, Duncan is David's son with Angie Bowie, whose name used to be Mary Angela Barnett. She was kind of like an all-around Renaissance woman. She was an actress, model, and a journalist. Talk about an underachiever, am I right? Now Duncan, he wouldn't follow either of his parents' paths. In fact, he's more known for his career in film as a director. But there's no denying there is a connection. He's got that same reserved, thoughtful nature that Bowie carried with him in his later years. Duncan has been open about his relationship with his father, and even spoke about how much Bowie supported his work behind the scenes. Even though Duncan didn't go down the same path in the music biz, you can sense that artistic drive, it still runs very deep in the family. He's a bit more low-key though, a bit more introverted, but his creative legacy is one that's still tied to that same pioneering spirit that David Bowie had. And isn't that what it's all about? Paving your own way while honoring the path before you. And his quieter life hasn't stopped him from starting a family of his own. He tied the knot back in 2012, but they do have 2 kids together. Hey, keeping this famous family going. Heck yeah, Duncan, heck yeah. Our favorite musical icons from the 70s left behind more than just music, they left legacies that continue to echo, pun intended, in their sons. From music to film, to simply making their way in the world forever altered by their famous dads. These sons carry a piece of that old rock and roll spirit with them. Some are remarkably similar, while others forged paths of their own. But each one of them reminds us of those unforgettable days when music was king. It's a bit like a time capsule, isn't it? Looking at them, we can still catch a glimpse of the magic we once knew. So, which musical icon was your favorite? Which son that we mentioned do you think looks most like Dad? And did we forget a famous rock star dad who has a son that looks a lot like him, or even doesn't? We can always make a round 2. Get down in the comment section and tell us everything about famous rock star dads and their sons. If you enjoyed our video, which we sure hope you did, we had a ton of fun putting it together, please hit that thumbs up icon, it really helps our channel a ton. Subscribe so you don't miss a memory. But most importantly, from my entire team here at Do You Remember, we want to thank you so much for watching, and rock on.